Mrs. Sterling sat at her 20-foot mahogany table, the silence of her mansion weighing heavier than her millions. Every night, she ate alone, a prisoner of her own prestige. She thought she had everything, until the new nanny's young son walked into her dining room and challenged her cold world. The mansion sat atop the hill like a silent, stone sentinel, its windows reflecting the orange glow of a setting sun that brought no warmth to the hollow rooms within, and inside, Mrs. Beatrice Sterling sat at the head of a dining table so long it seemed to stretch into a different zip code, her posture perfect, her pearls gleaming, and her expression a mask of practiced indifference as she stared at the three-course meal prepared by a chef she barely knew the name of, and this was her ritual. A nightly performance of wealth played out for an audience of none, because after her husband had passed and her business-minded children moved to different continents, the only thing left in the house was the echo of her own footsteps on the marble floors, and she had become a woman who valued order above all else, believing that the barriers she built with her money were the only things keeping the chaos of the world at bay. But that order was about to be disrupted by the arrival of Sarah, the new live-in nanny hired to manage the estate's domestic affairs while the grandchildren visited during the summers, and Sarah had brought with her a small, quiet shadow, her 6-year-old son, Leo, a boy with eyes full of curiosity and a heart that hadn't yet learned the unspoken rules of the upper class, and on this particular evening, the air in the dining room was thick with the scent of roasted duck and the oppressive quiet that Beatrice demanded, a silence so fragile that the distant sound of a toy car rolling across the hardwood floor in the hallway felt like a thunderclap, and Beatrice stiffened, her silver fork hovering over her plate as she waited for the intrusion to cease, but instead of retreating, the small footsteps grew closer, and Leo appeared in the arched doorway, clutching a tattered stuffed rabbit and looking at the vast, lonely woman at the end of the table with a mixture of awe and pity, and Beatrice looked at him with a gaze that had frozen rooms of powerful executives, her voice a low, icy warning as she asked him if he was lost, suggesting that children of the staff were expected to remain in the servants' wing after sunset, a remark so sharp and dismissive that it would have sent most adults scurrying for the exit, yet Leo didn't move. He simply tilted his head and asked a question that Beatrice hadn't heard in a decade. "Why do you eat in the dark?" And the question hung in the air, stripping away the elegance of the room and exposing the raw, ugly truth of her isolation, an isolation she had rebranded as exclusivity. And as Beatrice prepared to call for Sarah to remove the child, Leo took a bold step forward into the light of the chandelier, his small face reflecting a genuine concern that her millions could never buy, and he walked right up to the chair next to her, pulling it out with a screech that made her wince, and sat down as if he owned the place, telling her that his mother always said nobody should ever have to eat their vegetables without a friend to talk to, a gesture of pure, unadulterated kindness that Beatrice found herself entirely unprepared to handle, her defenses crumbling not because of an attack, but because of an invitation to be human again in a house that had become a museum of her own loneliness. The heated showdown that followed was not one of anger, but a collision of two vastly different worlds, one built on the cold accumulation of things and the other on the warm necessity of connection, and as Beatrice sat frozen, her hand clutching her silk napkin as if it were a shield, she found herself trapped between the urge to assert her authority and a sudden, terrifying realization that she was desperately hungry for the very thing this child was offering, and she told Leo in a voice that trembled slightly with suppressed emotion that she didn't need a friend, and that her table was for invited guests only, yet Leo simply pushed his tattered rabbit toward her and asked if the rabbit was invited, a question so absurd and innocent that it forced a crack in Beatrice's armor, a small, involuntary twitch of her lips that might have been a smile if she remembered how to use those muscles, and the power shift occurred in the silence that followed as Sarah rushed into the room, her face pale with fear as she apologized profusely, reaching out to grab Leo and lead him away before they were both fired. But Beatrice raised a hand, a gesture that usually signaled a dismissal but tonight felt like a plea, and she told Sarah to leave the boy where he was, her voice regaining some of its strength as she looked at Leo and told him that if he was going to sit at her table, he had better learn which fork to use for his salad, a challenge that Leo met with a wide, toothy grin and a flurry of questions about why there were so many forks in the first place, and over the next hour, the mansion transformed from a tomb into a classroom, as the lonely widow began to teach the nanny's son the nuances of etiquette while he taught her the nuances of joy, telling her stories about his school and his dreams of becoming an astronaut, his laughter ringing through the rafters and chasing away the ghosts of her past, and Beatrice found herself eating her meal not out of habit but with a genuine appetite, her eyes fixed on the boy's animated face as she realized that she had spent millions trying to fill her life with value, while this child had brought the only thing that actually mattered into her home for free. And as the dinner concluded and Sarah returned to take Leo to bed, Beatrice didn't return to her dark study or her silent ledgers. Instead, she walked them to the door and asked Leo if he would be available for dinner again the following evening, a request that Leo accepted with a high five that left Beatrice stunned and slightly breathless, realizing that the power she had wielded for so long was nothing compared to the power of being seen, not as a widow or a CEO, but as a person who was no longer eating alone. From a wider lens, the nightly dinners between the rich widow and the nanny's son became a local legend, a quiet revolution that spread through the mansion and eventually into the community, as Beatrice began to use her vast resources not just to build more walls, but to tear down the ones that kept people apart, and the moral of this dramatic transformation was etched into the changes she made to her will and her business practices, turning her focus toward youth mentorship and community centers where children like Leo would never have to worry about fitting in to a world that didn't value them, and her children, initially shocked by their mother's sudden change of heart, found themselves returning home more often, drawn back not by the promise of inheritance but by the new warmth that radiated from the woman who had once been as cold as the marble in her foyer, and the justice served. In this story was the redemption of a soul that had been lost to the poison of prestige, a confirmation that it is never too late to open your heart to the people who the world tells you are below you, because in the end, we are all just travelers looking for a place at the table. And for Beatrice, the greatest legacy she would leave behind was not a skyscraper or a stock portfolio, but the sound of laughter in a dining room that was finally full, and the image of a tattered stuffed rabbit sitting in the guest of honor's chair, a symbol of the day a child taught a queen that her crown was less important than her company, and as she looked at Leo during their graduation celebration years later, she knew that he hadn't just changed her nightly routine. He had saved her life by reminding her that wealth is only a burden if you don't use it to bless others, and that the most exclusive club in the world is the one where everyone is invited to share a meal. And as the sun set over the mansion on her final days, she didn't look at the vast estate with pride for what she owned, but with peace for who she loved, ensuring that the sterling name would forever be associated not with gold, but with the grace of a woman who learned to listen to the questions of a child, proving that the most profound shifts in power happen in the quietest moments of connection, and that the only thing better than a three-course meal is the person sitting across from you who makes you forget the food entirely. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who might be feeling lonely today. Support content that reminds us that human connection is the only currency that truly matters and that the barriers of class and wealth are nothing compared to the bridge of a simple conversation. Follow for more stories that celebrate the power of the heart, the wisdom of children, and the satisfying moments when a cold world finally melts into a warm embrace. Because nobody should ever have to eat alone, and sometimes, the best friend you'll ever have is the one you almost didn't invite in.